Absolutely nothing beats windshield time, a road trip, and good conversation in the car. Welcome to another episode of Dan the Road Trip Guy, where we have entertaining conversations about cars and road trips, life lessons, and maybe every now and then a little advice. I'm your host, Dan Neal, road trip extraordinaire, and now buckle up and enjoy the show. On today's episode, I am just like you. I'm along for the ride. This is a special episode here on Veterans Day. Back in 2023, my good friend Jeff Zerker interviewed his grandpa. His grandpa was 104 at the time. Unfortunately, he passed away this past September at 105. He was a World War II veteran. Jeff spent several hours with him recording stories, which is really what this podcast, when I started it, was all about, recording stories. I've so enjoyed listening to the stories of my guests over the past 2.5 years. I really think you're going to enjoy this story as Mr. Bueller recounts his days in World War II. So here is Jeff Zerker and his grandpa, George Bueller.
Obviously, a big part of your life and the history of the world and our society is World War II. I know you, growing up, I know you didn't talk about that a lot. It was a tragic and traumatic time, but some stories maybe that you'd like to share, including how you encountered randomly and surprisingly your brother, Art. You want to share?
We were shipped to Ireland.
Ireland?
We stayed in Ireland for 3 months before. They got us all ready to hit the beach.
And you were in D-Day.
And so,
right?
Yeah, June 4th, 1944, Utah Beach. They put us on big boats. We didn't know where it was going, across the English Channel from Ireland. And we would hit the beach. We didn't know we were hitting the beach, but when
they didn't tell you what was you were going to do.
They didn't tell us nothing. And so all we know, we had all fully packed, everything we needed to survive, plus our vehicles had intake and exhaust to keep running in the water.
Your motorcycle?
Yeah. And they had landing barges alongside of the beach where you came down, your whole outfit, you sat in at their landing craft and he took off for the beach. But anyhow, we come in with these big boats, and we stopped, and it just kept rocking. All of a sudden, we got all the, okay, you guys, and lined all up, and this and that. And they got great big ropes.
Ropes?
Over the side. How are we going to get down? The hollered. So you'll find out. Get a rope. Get the rope, get overboard, and go down on the rope.
Into the water?
Into the landing barge.
Oh, this is when you're loading into the vehicle.
Yeah, when we hit the beach with the boat, then we get off the boat and land. And you go back and forth, and you had to stick your feet out like that because you slam up against the side of that big boat. And finally you get in, your landing craft was about as big as this room, but long. And they had all our vehicles from our squad on there.
And you were at military police?
Yeah, and everything.
And so did you all have motorcycles?
Well, we had Jeeps and we had a couple of command cars.
Okay.
But mostly Jeeps and motorcycles. And so we're all set there, all ready. 2 stems, 1 intake, 1 exhaust.
And these were how tall to get above the water?
They were 10, 12 feet high above the motorcycle.
For each motorcycle?
Yeah.
Wow.
So it shows you what they expected you to go in the water. We got in there, everything set. Okay. Boom, off they went. And the guy that was driving our thing, I think he was afraid of hitting the beach. He must have stopped about 9 foot of salt water and threw the ramp down, and off we went. Oh, geez, wet all over.
You drove your motorcycle from the landing craft down into the water.
Into the water up on the beach.
Were you completely submerged or mostly submerged?
Almost.
Yeah.
And I was soaking wet. And the good thing it was in June because it was warm, summertime.
Yeah, right.
And then there's a guy standing there, director, shoot. And we shoot for the stone hedge walls. In France, everything is stone walls.
Right.
And we get in behind there, and then we start stripping everything off.
Yeah. So you didn't know what you were going into, or where you were going, or what you'd encounter when you got there.
We didn't know. We didn't know what. Of course, they had guns out there that could blow the ship right out of the water,
Right.
16-inch, 10-inch guns.
Yeah.
And so the Air Force was pounding them for maybe a week or so before the landing craft. Just to...
So what, do you remember what day it was when you landed? What date on the calendar? Because you said you loaded up on June 4th.
I know it was 1944.
Right. But
it was in June. It was sometime in June, because it started on June 4th. And so it could have been that we all hit June 4th.
So do you remember being afraid?
I tell you, I was like, and then my buddy says, he said, are you scared of this war? He said, I'm going to tell you something, boy. He said, I'm so scared the bullet passed me the first time, the second time I passed the bullet.
But when you were in that landing gear, or you were in the landing craft, how you felt?
You know how you felt? Am I going to make the beach? That's how you felt.
Are you going to make it to the beach?
Are you going to make it to the beach?
So you weren't worried about once you got there, it was just about whether
Once I got on the beach behind the wall, then I could figure out maneuvering.
Yeah.
But there you are exposed in the water hitting the beach. Are you going to make the beach? Because there was bodies floating around like cigars in the water.
You were on a Harley Davidson,
yeah.
Right? And did you have your dog with you at that time?
No, I met the dog when we were in there for about 6-7 months.
Okay.
And we were in a certain area, and then there was the dog. He's sitting there watching me. He's hungry.
Is this in France?
No, it's in Germany.
Oh, you already been to Germany.
And I thought, well, so in them German dogs, so you got to watch out there. And so I figured, what am I going to do with that money? I don't want to see him get killed. So I lifted him up and put him on the carrier on the back of the motorcycle. And he sat with his paws on the seat, so I got on and I felt his paws in here. And the faster we go, the tighter the paws.
So his paws would grip you from the back.
Yeah.
He would sit behind you.
He'd sit behind me on the steel luggage carrier.
He'd just hold on.
Huh?
He'd just hold on.
No, he'll hold on or he'd fall off.
Did you name the dog? Did you have a name for him?
Yeah, Ausgespiel. That means all played out.
All played out.
We were riding one night after I met my brother. He was with me. And
which brother was this?
Art.
Okay.
Art drove a truck.
So tell the story how you guys met.
Well, he drove a truck from the mainland inland and delivered all kinds of stuff, artillery, food, everything. And he happened to come through this town. They were barreling through that town 60 miles an hour. So the old man says, no more of that. They slow down to 35 or else we got to get... He turned down a dirt road, and this was in August. It was hotter than a firecracker. And I'm sweating.
Is this Germany or France?
And the dog is right down, his head down. Yeah. All I could see was my eyes still funny cakes of dust. That's it. So he finally pulled over and stopped. And before I could get on a motorcycle, somebody slapped me on the back. And the dog growled. He must have, how did that dog know he's my brother? You know. And here was my brother Art. I said, "Are you sucker?" I was glad to see him. So we spent 2 weeks to get to. I said, "Hey, you got to go back." The old man said, "You're speeding." So I said, "Whatever he does, that's your." So I said, "Okay." So I went back, and the old man says to me, "Well, who's this wise guy?" I said, "My younger brother." What? Well, he said, "We can't do much to younger brothers, but we can make them work." So he says to my brother, Art, "You know where there's any, Germans used to leave the washing machines, they used to wash the vehicle." He said, "You know where one of those washing machines is?" He said, "Yeah, I saw one." Well, he said, "That's what I want, that's your job. And until you get the one over here, you're not going to get away with it." Okay, well, he got one. But then we took it off. The last night before he was going, we were riding down an old road, and they start shelling again. And so we pulled into an old house down in the basement. I could still see the water and the rock and the
this
dog.
Was this in Germany? This is in Germany or France?
In Germany.
Okay.
And the dog, he's behind me, and he's pulling up tighter. I said, "Oh, something's happening." And he could sense them. They're starting to shell us with artillery, 88s. When they hit, they sound like a load of lumber. Plop. And he wasn't ready to go, and I grab him. And so Art says, "You better let him go, because I can't take him home, so we'll see what happens." So next couple of boom, and He took off.
The dog.
Never come back. They must have hit him. I was glad of that because I didn't know what to do with him when I was coming back home, you know. So that's when I spent art.
So he was with you for a couple weeks, and that was the last time you had your dog.
And so then that's the night I told him what.
Had you not seen him at all before you encountered him when he came through that town?
Only when he came through that town.
And he jumped out of the truck before you could come around and slap you
No,
on the back?
he pulled down the dirt road.
Right.
And the dust.
Yeah.
It was hot.
Yeah.
And it was building up on me. And
he didn't recognize you.
He knew who I was, but I didn't know who he was because I could only see the back of half of his head through the window. He pulled over and stopped. I said, no. So when I kind of stopped it and I went to get off like that to hold the dog there, he hits me on the back. Oh, boy, we're going to have trouble here. And sure enough, it was him.
Yeah. What did you guys talk about? I mean, you know, you're in the war for a number of years, but did you talk about with Art or anybody else? Just
we talked about
the severity, or did you talk about things to take your mind off the war, or did you talk about the severity of the situation?
I talked about things back home with him because he was going to Aunt Swanee, who was twice as old as him.
Yeah.
And so I tried to convince him, but I should have kept my mouth shut. He told me, he said, mind your own damn business. Yeah. I said, okay, Art.
In general, though, as a soldier, when you had conversations with the other men, did you try to remember things back home? Did you talk about current situations or what might be happening in the future? Or did you share your feelings much? Do you remember any of that?
Just worried about where we were going the next day and how bad it was.
Yeah.
We used to sleep in the old wooden houses at night, and they found out, said they were dropping bombs on the house. Killed a lot of men that way, so we had to sleep outside on the ground. That's it, on the ground. Or we get pine trees, and you take the limbs and make some kind of mattress to lay on it, and that was the way we went.
What was the toughest situation you recall? Battle or encounter or?
I never really had toughest. I had enough to scare me half to death.
Yeah.
I come around the corner one day, and I thought I was in my territory. I come around the corner, and there's a King Tiger tank, German.
A tank?
A gun that looked that big, you know, you could almost put your head in there, and it's sitting there. Nobody saying nothing.
Were you by yourself?
Yeah,
on
a motorcycle. I was most of the time by myself, make connections between my guys and fix. So I shut it down, and I just sat there, and I look. Well, there I said to myself, somebody's going to make a move. So I get up and walk into there, it's empty. Nobody's
in the tank. You encountered an empty tank. What other encounters or things where you thought, man, maybe this is the end, or?
Well, I rode with Patton for a while.
General Patton.
And I used to run for messages and stuff like that, direct traffic. And we come to the Siegfried line that was with the teeth.
Yeah.
And he stopped there and he's looking around for a minute and said,
he whistled.
I said, what?
Patton whistled for you.
He says, go back to quartermaster and tell him to give him 2 tanks with blades on. What the heck's he going to do? Come up there. He got about 500 yards away from him, and the tanks stopped pushing dirt in. He pushed the dirt road right over top of it.
Yeah.
Oh, the tanks. That's why that guy was smart. See, he used to think
like
things
an engineer.
Got the whole outfit right over there. Yeah. I'm thinking they spent 2-3 years building on. He was smart. I appreciate him because he was a smart man, but he had a big mouth. That's the trouble with him.
You somehow you got a German Luger, right? Wasn't there a company or something that you were on your bike and they surrendered?
No, I come in another road. We were not too far off. We was about a quarter of a mile from a concentration camp or a camp where they put all the German prisoners. And I come around this corner going out someplace. Whoa! There's a lieutenant and about 18 men all in line, fully armed, pistols, everything.
In formation.
When I come around the corner, I drop down,
You slid your
He says-
you slid your bike, or is that what you mean?
No, I just slowed down and stopped.
Okay.
And he threw up his hands and said, "We want to surrender." Before I could even say it.
He said that in English?
He did.
Wow.
The German.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of them had to learn in America, though.
Yeah.
He said, "What do I do?" And all the men, they were looking, they were wondering what's going to happen. I don't blame them. I said, well, the first thing you do, you take all your bayonets and your guns and everything off, and you throw them in the ditch to the side there. Boy, they took them off and everything else. And I said, all your medals and stuff, you appreciate, and so I can't help you with that, but the guys probably in the concentration camp, they would grab them. So here I am. I got about 40 men, the lieutenant and the whole squad, who were coming around the corner to the concentration camp. And
were they following you on your motorcycle?
Yeah. I told them they had to sort of run because I couldn't go too slow.
Yeah. Come
around the corner and there's those guys. Hey, look at Bueller. He's captured by the whole squad. You know that they surrendered to me. What you do with all the stuff? I said, it's back there around the corner. They run like anything back there to get their Lugers or something, souvenirs.
Yeah.
And the Germans, they're smiling on their face that big. I said to one of them, why? That's the lieutenant. He talked pretty good English. Why you surrender? He said, we had no hope. Sergeant, we have no hope. What do we have hope? Well, we keep going to get killed. So we all got together. We decided we were going to turn ourselves in. It might be scary, but they said, we meet you. I said, well, that's good. I'm glad.
Yeah. So you took them to a camp, a prison camp that the American or the Allies
The Americans. They had a great big area where they put the captured Germans
in Germany.
Yeah.
This was in Germany. Toward the end of the war, or do you remember?
I don't know whether it was in Germany or in parts of France or something. It was someplace around the Battle of the Bulge. They had a big area.
Okay, so that was about the time when this happened?
Yeah, that was about the time when it was coming to an end. And then guys, boy, they rooted me for about a month after.
Did you get commendation for that? Did you get a medal, or did you get any?
I got for that, yeah, I got.
But you stayed alive. Did you think they were gonna kill you?
Yeah, I was. You know what? I was alive. That's right. And I thought maybe if those guys were, how could they get up that far? I don't know without being noticed.
Right. Battle of the Bulge was pretty fierce, pretty bloody.
Yeah.
Any memories or feelings that you have?
No, it's just that you see so many dead people, and then we had for 2 weeks we had to go around collecting dead bodies.
Oh.
And they found out that we were doing it, the Germans, so they used to load their dead bodies with ammunition, kill you.
Right.
So we had a rope with a hook, three-prong hook. We used to throw it out there, and then pull it back and hook the body and shake it. And if it didn't go off, we'd go pick it up.
Would sometimes explosives go off on the bodies?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had a couple of guys who was hurt, injured bad.
Now, do you remember riding into Berlin?
I didn't go into Berlin.
You didn't go to Berlin?
Never
Okay.
went to Berlin.
Okay.
In Belgium area, Luxembourg, Belgium, France.
Parts of Germany at times?
That's where the Battle of Belgium.
Yeah. Was that the worst battle that you were in? Do you remember?
Cold, wet, frozen feet, soaked up the hair. You had nothing dry to put on. Nothing dry.
What kind of gear? Do you remember your gear, like your weapons and your,
I had a machine gun. On a motorcycle, I had a big case with a machine gun, a Thompson machine gun. It fired about 80 rounds a minute.
Wow.
And they had the big bullets. And that sucker would jerk your head off and you could hold on to it till.
Yeah.
But I never used it. I had an American pistol, 45 Colt pistol, And you couldn't kill an elephant with it because when you shot it, it went up in the air. So we used to use the German Luger.
Yeah.
The Luger, the German, you just pull like that, it would just,
Smooth.
The Luger was the one, and then Wayne still got my Luger.
Yeah.
But I pulled the firing pin out and ground it off.
Art was in logistics, delivery, supply chain, and Gene was in the Air Force, right?
Gene was a B-17 shot down.
Was he a gunner or a pilot?
Yeah, he was a gunner.
And he was a prisoner of war, right?
11 months.
In Germany?
Sure, he came out of there, was under 90 pounds when they rescued him.
Wow.
And they treated him, he didn't talk much, but I don't blame him. He said there was 11 men in the size of a one-car garage. That's where they slept. He said they had a gallon can or whatever he could get in there for heat. And he said they half starved you all day long and try to work you as much as they can. So he never talked much about it. What he suffered from, I still say that's what caused his early death.
Yeah. The trauma from that. Yeah. What was Fred's role?
Fred was anti-gun. He had one position someplace in Paris or in France. It was an anti-gun man. He shot aircraft, so he didn't move much.
Oh, okay.
So Art and I was the guys that moved, and Gene was B-17.
Yeah. Now, was that your choice to be an MP, or how did that work out? Was that something through training?
When I went in the infantry.
Yeah.
Everybody, I went into infantry, the 8th Division, infantry division. And they were, I think it was about 40 men in the barracks. And they gave us guns. They gave us half a broomstick. That was a rifle.
Yeah.
They didn't have enough rifles for us.
Wow.
So I trained for 3 months with that broomstick in the infantry. And I thought, oh boy, I don't like this idea. So one day they come in and said, we were interested in men that know anything about motorcycles. I said, I do. He said, what do you know about it? I said, well, I used to fool around with them, and fix them and kid them, ride once in a while. He said, you get out here, I'll stand outside, we'll be with you right away. So I said, holy mackerel, what's going on here? So my whole company, they got only 6 or so really rode motorcycles. So they said, go into headquarters with me. We got on a van, and we took all our stuff, and we got a van, and they took us to headquarters. And company, I don't know what it was, but that's where the MPs in
Where was this?
South Carolina.
Okay.
So then they start asking questions. So, okay, yes, they assigned a motorcycle to each of us. And then they said to me, would you be interested in the mechanics? I said, yes. So they sent me to Fort Benning, Georgia for 3 months to learn a motor and the motorcycle. And so when I was in charge of the squad, so when they broke down someplace, they give me an idea where they might be, and I'd go after them.
This was in training, or this was actually in the war?
This was in Germany.
Oh, in the war, yeah.
And they used to run a motorcycle because they couldn't run it no more. So I figured, see, on the transmission, there's a little gear, and on the wheel, it's a big gear. That makes the speed. And they were get together, and they were having races, and they were stripping that little gear.
During the war?
Yeah. So the old man says to me, he says, George, what's going on? I said, well, they're stripping the gear in the transmission. He said, what would do that? I said, they're racing. Oh, he went through the roof. He said, get all of them. Get them in here. I want to talk to them. So they come in. He said, I understand that you guys are racing. And I understand that you're racing and you can't go to war. And I understand that Bueller's got to go out there and put a new sprocket gear on the transmission. That's going to stop right now, he said. And the next one I hear actually did that back in the squad at infantry.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to work so much.
So being an MP was really a privilege. Most guys considered it a privilege, right?
When I was in camp in Tennessee, we're in Tennessee in Temps, and I used to have to go out there in the morning and direct that main traffic square, traffic. Right. And here comes this 3-star Jap, pulls right up, says, "Soldier," he says, "what outfit are you from?" I said, "From the MP, sir, 8th Division." He says, "What's your squad leader's name or your officer's name?" Okay. He says, "Thank you very much." He says, "I like what you look like." Calls up the squad leader. He chose me to try on a brand new outfit they're going to use on the desert. I said, "Why me?" He said, "Because every time I come past, he said, you look like you had a new uniform on. What do you do?" I said, "I take care of him, sir. I keep him nice and hang him." He chose me to wear it.
Wow.
So he looked at the thing and all over it. I got pictures of it someplace.
Yeah, I've seen him. Yeah. You look sharp.
And he said, "I thank you." He said, "You're very impressive as a soldier." I said, "Thank you, sir."
What kind of advice would you give someone, in their 20s or 30s, let's say?
Respect everybody the way you want to be respected. Stranger or no stranger. First feel a person out, see what he is and who he is and what he does. That's the first thing. And the next thing is to make people laugh and smile and be happy.
What about, let's fast forward, if someone is, say they're 60 or 65 years old, they're at a different stage of life, and any different advice to give to that age of person?
Remember your Lord.
Remember the Lord.
And if they could tell me that God did direct my life, I was in situations I could have gotten in so much trouble, and it was stopped.
Right.
Stopped.
Until we meet up again, you can find me on the internet at dantheroadtripguy.com. I hope you will follow this podcast so that you don't miss any upcoming episodes, and share it with your family and friends so that they can enjoy the stories of my guests also. Until we meet again on a future episode, keep having conversations with each other and keep driving.